Rich man hires black maid to take care of his mother, but hidden cameras reveal everything. Robert Hston was a man shaped by polished boardrooms, closed doors, and cold calculations. At 52, his name was printed on Fortune magazine covers, spoken in financial circles with a mix of admiration and fear. The public knew him as a titan of mergers and acquisitions, a man who built his wealth on logic, not sentiment. But few knew about Eleanor Heston, his mother, once a world-class concert pianist. Elena had raised Robert alone after his father disappeared early in his childhood. She was regal, strict, brilliant, and distant. Their relationship had always been formal, tinged with discipline instead of warmth. Then came the stroke. It stripped Eleanor of nearly everything: mobility, speech, independence. Robert, who never quite knew how to connect with her in life, found himself responsible for her care now that she hovered on the edge of death. He didn't move her into his home. That would have been too personal. Instead, he had a private medical suite installed on the ground floor of one of his estates, top of the line, state approved, no expense spared. But for Robert, it was about obligation, not love. To assist with the day-to-day care, he hired someone. Her name was Janelle. She was 29, black, soft-spoken, and wore a plain orange uniform. When she arrived at the estate, she didn't boast degrees from medical schools, nor did she speak with practiced charm. Her resume was simple, her experience real: elderly homes, end-of-life care, 2 prior living clients who'd both passed peacefully. Robert barely looked at her during the interview. He tapped his pen once, twice, then asked flatly, "Why do you want this job?" Janelle answered without hesitation, "Because no one should die feeling forgotten." He gave a nod and a quiet, "You start Monday." Robert didn't trust easily. Decades of wealth had taught him that. So while Janelle settled into her new role, he had discreet security cameras installed in his mother's suite, hidden, silent, tucked behind vents, lamps, the corners of decorative frames. He told himself it was necessary. He told himself people lied during interviews. For the first 2 weeks, he was too busy to check the footage: press conferences, investor calls, legal disputes. By the time he remembered, it was nearly midnight. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, sank into the leather chair in his study, and pulled up the feed. He expected boredom, maybe neglect, but what he saw made his drink sit untouched. On screen, Eleanor lay asleep, the room dim, the machines quiet. Beside her, Janelle was reading aloud, not from a medical chart, but from a weathered poetry book Robert vaguely recognised. Her voice was low, gentle, and rhythmic, each word enunciated with care. Eleanor's hand rested in Janelle's lap, her fingers twitching softly as if she remembered the lines. The next clip showed Janelle brushing Eleanor's hair, not hurriedly, not out of duty, but like a daughter might do for a mother. She hummed a lullaby, unfamiliar yet soothing. When Eleanor whimpered in her sleep, Janelle whispered, "It's all right. You're safe. I've got you." Robert stared at the screen, jaw slack. In the next feed, Janelle had decorated the nightstand with tiny folded paper cranes. Robert recognised them. His mother used to fold origami birds when she was anxious. She hadn't done it in decades. Another clip. Janelle seated beside Eleanor, holding her hand as music played faintly in the background, one of Eleanor's old piano compositions recorded years ago. Janelle wasn't just providing care, she was giving memory, restoring dignity. But the most striking moment came later. Eleanor had a nightmare. Her breathing spiked, her hands clenched. Janelle rushed to her side, murmuring, "You're not alone. You are not forgotten." Then she wrapped Eleanor in her arms and rocked her gently. Eleanor's cries faded and she slowly relaxed. Robert sat motionless. Hours passed, he didn't sleep. The next morning, he reviewed more footage, days' worth. Every frame revealed the same truth. Janelle didn't treat Eleanor like a job. She treated her like she mattered, like she was loved. For the first time in years, Robert visited his mother without looking at his watch. She looked different now, softer, awake in the eyes. When he entered, Janelle stood respectfully. "She's had a good morning," she said. "She remembered your name today." He nodded quietly, then turned to Eleanor. He sat beside her and reached for her hand, awkwardly, unsure. To his shock, she squeezed back. It was the first time in decades she had reached for him without being asked. And in that moment, Robert felt something shift inside him. He didn't speak it aloud, but deep down he knew this woman in orange was changing everything. Robert Hull hadn't slept well since watching the footage. It wasn't that he was disturbed, at least not in the way he expected. No, what unsettled him most was how unfamiliar everything felt. The warmth in Janelle's voice, the tenderness in her hands, the softness that had somehow crept into his mother's expression. Eleanor, once unreachable, was changing. Slowly. She was speaking again, only a few words here and there, but Robert noticed she no longer flinched when he touched her hand. Her eyes, once distant, now lingered when he entered the room. And always, Janelle was nearby. She never sought praise, never asked for extra pay. She simply worked, folding sheets, warming Eleanor's tea, turning on her old music in the morning, and reading her poetry in the afternoon. Robert watched more clips, unable to stop. Each one chipped away at a wall he didn't realize he'd built. And the more he saw, the more a question echoed in his mind. Why does she care so much? One evening, unable to resist the gnawing curiosity, he invited Janelle to sit with him in the study. She hesitated at first, wiping her hands on her uniform before slowly stepping in. "Everything all right, sir?" she asked. Robert looked up from his chair. "You've done more for my mother in a month than I have in 10 years. She blinked. She's easy to care for when someone pays attention. There was no malice in her voice, just truth. He studied her face, calm, focused, but there was something beneath it, a history. "Have we met before?" he asked. She tilted her head, then smiled faintly. "No." "But you met my mother." Robert froze. "I'm sorry. Her name was Lorna. She was your housekeeper for 6 years long ago." The memory struck like lightning. Lorna, quiet, graceful, always humming. She used to bring him cookies after school, but then... He sat forward. "She was fired." "She was accused," Janelle corrected, "of stealing jewellery from your mother's dressing table." Robert's stomach turned. He was 17 then. He barely remembered the details, only the shouting, the rushed dismissal, the shame on Lorna's face. She was never given a chance to explain. "My mother believed it. I didn't question her," he said quietly. "She didn't do it," Janelle replied. "I know because I found the necklace years later, buried in a sewing box of hers wrapped in tissue. She said Eleanor gave it to her in thanks after a surgery. But when it went missing, she didn't speak up. She knew no one would believe her." Robert's hands curled into fists. He remembered how suddenly Lorna disappeared, how they never spoke of her again. "She died 10 years ago," Janelle added more softly now. "But she never stopped talking about Eleanor. Said she was a complicated woman, but not heartless. Said she'd once played the piano for her while she cleaned. That meant something to her." Robert swallowed hard. "So, you took this job knowing who we were?" Janelle nodded. "Not for revenge, if that's what you're thinking. I just wanted to see her again. Not as a maid's daughter, but as someone who could return what was once taken." Silence stretched between them. Robert stood up, moved to the window. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low, "for what we did, for what I didn't stop." "I'm not here for apologies," Janelle said. "I'm here because people deserve better endings than they got beginnings." His throat tightened. "You brought her back," he murmured. "I thought she was already gone." "She just needed to be seen again," Janelle said. That night, Robert did something he hadn't done in years. He sat by his mother's bed, held her hand, and listened. And she spoke 3 clear words. "You came back." His eyes welled. "I'm sorry it took so long." From then on, Robert visited daily. He helped with feeding, asked about the poems she liked, played recordings of her favourite concertos. Slowly, Eleanor's presence returned, not fully, but enough. Enough to mend something fractured. One afternoon, Janelle wheeled Eleanor into the garden. Robert joined them. The sun was gentle and the trees swayed. "She loved this spot," Janelle said. "Your mother told me it's where she used to practice before her concerts." Robert smiled. "I'd forgotten that." "She didn't," Janelle said. In the weeks that followed, Robert made a quiet decision. He traced the history of his staff, interviewed the old estate workers. He discovered more than one instance where people like Lorna had been quietly dismissed. No trial, no voice. He created a fund, named it the Lorna Initiative, a scholarship and legal aid program for wrongfully accused domestic workers. And at the launch ceremony, he asked Janelle to speak. She stood on stage, dressed in a deep navy dress, no longer in uniform, and said, "Redemption isn't just saying sorry, it's what you build after the truth." The audience rose in applause. Back at the estate, Eleanor's health slowly declined. But in her final months, she was surrounded by care, not just from nurses, but from her son, and from a young woman who had every reason to hate her, yet chose to offer love instead. On her last day, Eleanor held both their hands. "She would have been proud of you," Janelle said quietly to Robert. "No," Robert whispered, looking at her. "She would have been proud of you." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.